Part 2, Chapter 2, The Week.
And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had created, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had created. And God blessed the seventh day and sanctified it, because that in it he had rested from all his work which God created and made. Genesis 2:2-3.
On the seventh day of the creative week, God and his Son established the weekly cycle of time on earth. The week, independent of astronomical phenomena, serves as evidence of the divine origin of our world. Years ago, I had a conversation with my wife's grandfather, a wonderful man whose atheistic communist beliefs, despite his frequent reading of the scriptures, prevented him from fully accepting their testimony. I once told him that, unlike other units of time, the week as a division of time is not based on any natural astronomical regularity. I asked him, from where then did people collectively adopt such a division of time? My question piqued his interest, and in time he inquired of his learned son whether the week could indeed be a sign of the world's divine origin. He was told that it was, and I believe this event significantly influenced his thinking about the reality of the biblical God. Theories on the origin of the week. Despite the light of God's word, some scholars who favor the influence of ancient Babylon, Pan-Babylonians, believe that the origin of the week lies with the Babylonians.
The most common hypothesis was formulated by Jules Oppert, a famous 19th century Assyriologist who discovered a list of Babylonian star deities arranged in an order that corresponded to the days of the week: Shamash, sun; Shin, moon; Nergal, Mars; Nebo, Mercury; Merodach, Jupiter; Ishtar, Venus; and Adar, Saturn. For each hour of the day, a patron god was assigned, and the star associated with the first hour of the day, sunrise, was considered the patron of the entire day. Sun, moon, Mars, Mercury, Jupiter, Venus, and Saturn, i.e., exactly in the order of the days of the week. Jim W. Fall, The Invention of Time and Space, A Reconstruction of the Ancient World, Great Pyramid Publishing, 2013, page 69.
This hypothesis, however, overlooks the possibility that the Babylonians utilized a pre-existing system of dividing time into weeks. They also divided the 28-day lunar cycle into 4 weeks. Yet the lunar cycle is not precisely 28 days. It takes the moon 27 days, 7 hours, and 43 minutes to complete one full orbit around the Earth. This is called a sidereal month and is measured by its position relative to distant fixed stars. However, it takes the moon approximately 29.5 days to complete one cycle of phases, from new moon to new moon. Therefore, those who attempt to follow so-called lunar Sabbaths disregard the fact that Scripture never linked the weekly Sabbath with the moon. In fact, the divine pattern of Father, Source, and Son, channel, as expressed in 1 Corinthians 8:6, identifies the sun as the factor associated with the weekly Sabbath, and the moon with the annual Sabbaths, holidays, Psalm 104:19. It should also be noted that the history of the Jews parallels that of the Babylonians. According to the genealogical and chronological records in Genesis chapters 10 and 11, Abraham, the forefather of Israel, was most likely a contemporary of Nimrod, the founder of Babylon.
Because that Abraham obeyed my voice and kept my charge, my commandments, my statutes, and my laws. Genesis 26:5. For I know him, that he will command his children and his household after him, and they shall keep the way of the Lord, to do justice and judgment, that the Lord may bring upon Abraham that which he hath spoken of him. Genesis 18:19.
Abraham kept the commandments of God and his Son, among which is invariably the one about the Sabbath, which is at the end of the weekly cycle.
And on the seventh day God ended his work which he had made, and he rested on the seventh day from all his work which he had made. Genesis 2:2. Remember the Sabbath day to keep it holy. 6 days shalt thou labor and do all thy work, but the seventh day is the Sabbath of the Lord thy God. For in 6 days the Lord made heaven and earth, the sea, and all that in them is, and rested the seventh day. Wherefore the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and hallowed it. Exodus 28:11.
It couldn't be said more clearly, could it? The original and true seventh day is Saturday. And if Abraham followed these principles, how much more so must the believers who lived before the flood have done so? Even today in countries like the USA, Canada, and Japan, Sunday is still considered the first day of the week. But then why in our country and in many other countries is Sunday the seventh day of the week? And when did this change come about? The signs of the change are also visible in the Bulgarian name of the day, Wednesday, Sreda, which is related to the idea of the middle of the week. But Wednesday could only be Wednesday when the first day of the week is Sunday and the last is Saturday. Also, the meaning of the words Sunday and Saturday does not unambiguously resolve the issue. While Sunday, in some interpretations, may imply not acting, i.e. resting, Saturday comes from the Hebrew Shabbat, which is also related to rest. Historical shifts in the weekly cycle.
When Christianity began to spread and influence calendar reckoning, 4th to 6th centuries, the beginning of the week remained unchanged, even as the Sabbath was shifted to Sunday. When Cyril and Methodius, late 9th century, brought Christianity to the Slavs through the alphabet, they adopted the Greek tradition of counting days, but started counting from Monday instead of Sunday. As a result, Slavic languages now treat Monday as the first day, Tuesday as the second, and so on. Saturday and Sunday are the only days that are named, not numbered. In Russian, the word for Sunday, Voskresenye, means resurrection. Pope Nicholas I, letter 99, 866. Available at https://sourcebooks.fordham.edu. Basis 866 Nicholas, Bulgar.asp.
Of particular interest in this regard is the letter of Pope Nicholas I in response to the questions of Prince Boris I, 852 to 889, regarding the day off.
You want to know whether someone has the right to work on Saturday or Sunday. If the truth itself commands through itself that the Sabbath should not be kept according to the letter, then whoever keeps the Sabbath leisure time according to the letter of the law, whom else is he contradicting but the truth itself? But on Sunday, a person should cease earthly labor and devote himself to prayer in every way, so that any negligence committed during the other 6 days can be atoned for by prayers throughout the day of the Lord's resurrection. Saint Network. Sunday is the seventh day of the week, true or false. Available at https://network. Religion. Sunday is the seventh day of the week, true or false. HTML.
Although not explicitly stated, the phrase, the remaining 6 days, implies that Sunday should be understood as the last day of the week. However, the so-called Judaization of Christians and Sabbath observance continued, and this issue became controversial during the schism between the Western and Eastern churches.
Among the accusations leveled by the Christians of the West, Catholics, against those of the East, Orthodox, was that they Sabbatized, rested on Saturday, in addition to worshipping on the first day of the week. Patriarch Michael Cerularius defended the Sabbath by citing God's command in Exodus 28-11. On July 16, 1054, a Saturday, just before the service began, 3 papal legates placed the document of anathematization on the altar in the Cathedral of Hagia Sophia. Frisian.com, The Days of the Week. Available at www.frisian.com.
It is believed that the final transformation of Sunday into the seventh day occurred sometime only in the 10th century through a natural shift of the end of the week due to the festive nature of Sunday.
We may note that on early Christian coins, the Sabbath was designated as the seventh day following the Bible. On later coins, however, it is designated as the sixth day. This change seems to have been brought about by the natural tendency to regard the celebrated special day of the weekly cycle as the end of the cycle rather than the beginning. Thus, after about the 10th century, Sunday replaced the Sabbath as the seventh day for most Christians, A similar change occurred in the Islamic world, where Friday began as the 6th day, but later came to be counted as the 7th day. Michael Falk, on the name of the weekly day of rest, page 6.
There is another point of view regarding changing Monday to the first day of the week.
The increasingly common convention of starting calendar weeks on Mondays is a result of Western European names, especially German, not calling Saturday Saturday, or no longer doing so in a recognizable way. Since Christians, especially Protestants, consider Sunday to be Saturday, the tendency is to number it as the 7th day, not the first. However, knowledge of Greek or Arabic or several Romance languages would show us that Saturday remains Saturday, not only in Hebrew but even for Christians and Muslims. Wikipedia, ISO 8601, available at https://bg.wikipedia.org wiki ISO Yost 8601. In more recent times, industrial society has done much to disrupt the traditional concept of Sunday as the first day. According to Webster's 9th New Collegiate Dictionary, 1983, the term weekend, first recorded in 1878, refers to the period between the end of one work or business or school week and the beginning of the next. This understanding firmly places Sunday at the end of the week. This is probably why the International Organization for Standardization, ISO, decided in 1988 that Monday should be considered the first day of the week. Calendars in many European countries now follow the same organization's decision 8601.
The Sabbath and New Covenant, the so-called arguments in favor of Sunday, John 20:19, 26-29, Acts 2:1-4, 27, 1 Corinthians 16:1, 2, only emphasize that it is the first day of the week. Revelation 1:10 tells us that John received his visions on the Lord's day, which according to the entire Bible is the Sabbath. Only Ephesians 2:15 and Colossians 2:16, 17 deserve special consideration, because here the argument is different.
Having abolished in his flesh the enmity, even the law of commandments contained in ordinances. Ephesians 2:15.
The word ordinances in Greek is dogma, and is found in the following places. In the Greek Old Testament of the Apostolic Polyglot: Ezra 8:8, Ezekiel 20:26, Daniel 2:13, Daniel 3:10, 12, 29, Daniel 4:6, 6:8, 9, 10, 12, 13, 15, 26. In none of these cases is the word connected with the law of God, and its meaning gravitates around the idea of mortal human decrees. These decrees are according to the false justice that every sin must be punished, and the enmity of man against God, and it is precisely this that the Son of God destroyed on the cross by making sacrifice and offering to cease. Daniel 9:27. The same word is also found in Colossians 1:14-17.
Blotting out the handwriting of ordinances that was against us, which was contrary to us, and took it out of the way, nailing it to his cross. Let no man therefore judge you in meat, or in drink, or in respect of an holy day, or of the new moon, or of the Sabbath days, which are a shadow of things to come, but the body is of Christ. Colossians 2:14-17.
The phrase "in respect of" or "in connection with" is one of the few possible translations of the Greek meros, which in 31 of its 43 uses in the New Testament means a part, share, or portion of something. The text would then be, "Therefore let no one judge you in food or drink, or in respect of a festival, or a new moon, or a Sabbath, which are a shadow of things to come, but the reality is Christ." Colossians 2:14-17. The shadow spoken of here is not what is included in the expression festival, new moon, or Sabbath, but the meals and drinks, which actually have a transitory meaning as symbols and therefore constitute only a part of the eternal divine times.